Hi everybody, this video I'm going to go over a little bit about the anti-bullying laws, the anti-discrimination laws, and what's referred to as the no promo homo laws in Texas, and just looking at big picture for across the United States as well. So first off, GLSEN does a great job of showing different infographics and lots of data and statistics that go over not just the anti-bullying laws or laws by state, but they also go over current statistics and information for students who are in the LGBT community. So first, let's look at this one. This graph demonstrates which states have laws for anti-bullying that specifically address sexual orientation and gender identity. So if it's with yellow, that means that the anti-bullying laws that they have specifically address sexual orientation and gender identity, which means Texas does have anti-bullying laws, but they don't specifically cover sexual orientation and gender identity. And the reason that that's a big deal is because then it's also not considered a protected class that would come under some of these other laws like civil rights laws or humanitarian laws. So that's why it's important for states to have laws that specifically cover these certain groups. So that's one. Two, we also see that Texas doesn't have non-discrimination laws, again, that specifically cover sexual orientation and gender identity. They cover anti-discrimination or non-discrimination by, let's say, race and by gender, which means the biological gender, but not gender identity. And they cover class, but they don't cover sexual orientation and they don't cover gender identity. And again, that goes to that larger picture of if you're not covered under specifically these things, then these other laws don't necessarily come into play. It doesn't mean that we don't see schools incorporate non-discrimination policies based on sexual orientation and gender identity, but the state laws don't specifically cover sexual orientation and gender identity. One of the other parts that's really interesting is something that's referred to as no promo homo laws. And that's something you can see I didn't make up myself. That's what it's referred to here. And basically what that means is that there are specific laws in Texas that prohibit homosexuality. And so I've looked up those codes, and basically there's two main codes that are pretty significant in Texas. And that's why they're called to no promo homo laws. So one, it's still illegal in Texas to be homosexual, and so you can look that up in the code. That's illegal. And well, actually, so there's two other things. So one, it's still illegal to be homosexual in Texas. Two, we in health education cannot specifically talk about homosexuality as an acceptable lifestyle. In fact, under health education, teachers are required by law to state that homosexuality is not an acceptable lifestyle. Now, where this has kind of blurred the lines is some teachers have taken that to mean, well, we can't ever talk about homosexuality. We can't ever talk about same-sex couples or same-sex families. That's not true. That's not what the law says. It specifically is only covered under health education laws. It doesn't mean that you can't ever talk about same-sex couples through books in your ELA class or through social studies or through other avenues. What it specifically is referring to is when we talk about sex education, under the law, we are not allowed to say that same-sex couples are an acceptable lifestyle when we're talking about sex education. The other part of it, too, is in the so-called Romeo and Juliet laws. There are some laws that cover or protect kids who are engaging in sexual activity, which doesn't necessarily mean intercourse. It can mean any kind of sexual activity for teenagers. What it doesn't cover is same-sex teenagers. So specifically under the Texas laws, right now it says that let's say a female of 16 and a male of 18, that would be acceptable under the Romeo and Juliet law, but to have a 16-year-old male and an 18-year-old male would not be acceptable. So Texas, and you can see some of the other states here in the South, specifically still have laws on the books that promote discrimination or promote the idea that homosexuality is not an acceptable lifestyle. So you'll be reviewing this a little bit further in the module, but GLSEN, again, is a great resource for understanding some of the things that are happening with our LGBT community.